some very special guests. We have the young ladies from Girl Scout Troop 27 308. All right, if everyone would please rise. Take it away, ladies. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, ladies. So I'll explain a little bit more about the Q&A process in a minute, but first I'm going to hand it over to Congressman Deluzio for some opening remarks.
Right, Caroline, thank you. Before our Girl Scouts leave, one more round of applause for them. Is everyone here when you're back? Thumbs up? Okay. Welcome. Thank you, of course, to Riverview School District for hosting us. Kurt, custodians are doing a lot to help us get set up and make sure this happens. Thank you. We've got cops from Oakmont and Allegheny County Police here to keep everybody safe. Thank you guys for being here. My team is all around who, if you don't know them, get to know them. They work hard every day. They're really good public servants. I'm proud of them. And thank you to everyone for coming. This is our democracy. You're all a part of it. We're all a part of it. Thank you for being here. Hopefully you know something about me. I'm Congressman Deluzio. I represent us in Congress. I grew up in Thornburg, which no one ever knows where that is in Allegheny County, tiny borough in the western part of the county. Went to Ingram Elementary. I'm a grad of Camden. I was a senior in high school when the 9/11 attacks happened. I went off to the Naval Academy, became a naval officer. I served at sea, did a tour on the ground in Iraq, and became a lawyer after my time in the military. I was doing voting rights work, election security work. Most recently, before I got the honor to have this job, I was working at Pitt and did some organizing there alongside the steelworkers. My wife and I have 4 young kids. There was a soccer game today. There was a birthday party at the zoo. I could go on and on what they've been up to. We had a full day. We're very proud to be raising my family where I grew up, in the place that made me. And it's a great honor for me to have this job to represent all of us in Washington. I pinch myself every day that I get to do this. This community though, right, we have been through a lot, especially recently. I want to start talking about the storms that happened a couple weeks back. So many of us, my family included, without power, some more than a week. I think 300,000 people in the region lost power for some amount of time. That's a lot. And I know what the impacts have been for folks, whether it was medicine, losing food, frozen baby milk, I could go breast milk, I could go on and on what the impacts were. And thank goodness it wasn't a 100-degree day. It could have been much more dangerous for folks. I know the linemen and the workers were doing as much as they could, but the fact is, if we're going to have storms like that, which it seems like we're going to have more, it can't be the case in the United States in 2025 we're going to go a week without power. I sent a survey out. I'm welcoming ideas. I want to hear what your experiences were. I've already heard from folks more than 1,000 responses talking about everything from burying the lines, more aggressive tree pruning, better communication about real timelines for when your power be restored, getting generators to first responders and others. There's no wrong answer here. I want to hear from folks. And my job in this is then take those ideas, push our local government and utilities, come up with something so that this is not what we're living through every time we have a big storm. That's the hope. But please take that survey. Make sure I hear from you on this. That ties into something I talk about with our values, right? Around here, we look out for each other. I think that's pretty central to who we are as people in Western Pennsylvania. I talk about hard work. I talk about patriotism a lot. I care about it a lot. You go to almost every home in our region, our district. Somebody somewhere has worn a uniform and they're proud of it. That's an important part of who we are. And I'll be blunt. I see people who I serve with, who I see in Washington, talk a lot about waving the flag and act like they have some monopoly on loving this country. I don't think it's patriotic to put Social Security at risk. That's an earned benefit for folks after a lifetime of hard work. I don't think it's too patriotic to take away and put at risk health care for people millions of Americans. That's what's happening. I don't think it's patriotic to test the limits of our Constitution, to test where the I don't think it's terribly patriotic to attack workers' rights and bargaining rights that exist in this country for a century. I don't think it's patriotic. I don't think it's patriotic to put at risk veterans' health care, but at the same time you're pardoning cop eaters from January 6th. My fellow veterans, I hope, understand this and have heard from me and understand that I'm in the fight for our health care and our benefits is whatever it takes. There already have been reports of stalled clinical trials, including at VA Pittsburgh, that could be a life-saving treatment for someone. I have been demanding answers about this. I've pressed the VA secretary, including directly questioning this past week. I've heard reports of clinicians and doctors being put in spaces where they can't provide patient confidentiality. I'm talking people like psychiatrists. That's dangerous stuff. That should not be happening. When I say putting veterans' care at risk, that's what I'm talking about. Those are real actions we're seeing from this administration that I don't like, that my colleagues and I are going to continue to push up on. We're not letting up. And this is happening, let's be clear, I want to get to questions, but this is happening when the Trump administration and their allies in Congress are pushing a tax, big bill that would saddle all of us with trillions of debt, take away health care from people to pay for tax giveaways to corporations and the richest people on planet Earth. I think that's fiscally reckless. And that impact is not hypothetical. We have already seen what the scoring is. Trillions to the deficit that we will pay for. Millions. By some measures, initially 7 and up to 14 million people losing health care. Emergency food programs cut. We saw the bills debated in the main committees this week, where Republicans were nearly voting on party line, with Democrats in opposition. The one thing happened that I thought was positive in the last day or so, it failed to vote in the Budget Committee. And that was all Democrats and a couple of Republicans. I say my Republican counterparts are a bit in disarray, fighting over where this bill will be. I guess they want to take health care away from even more people on Medicaid. I don't agree with that. But if I see this bill in its current form, I'll be voting no. That's an easy vote for me. One thing I do want to vote for, I hope we finally get to vote for, is to ban congressional stock trading. I think it's corrupt. 4 speeches this week with one of my Democratic colleagues from Rhode Island and a very conservative Republican colleague from Texas. That's good. We got to have a bipartisan deal if we're going to pass this thing. And I think you ask people in this room or anywhere else, Democrat, Republican, do you think members of Congress should get rich trading stock on information we learn in our jobs? The answer is no. They think it's corrupt. I'm worried about stock trading from people who knew in the administration about the tariff clauses. I think that's corrupt. We should be investigating that. I think building trust in this government is about taking on corruption wherever we see it. I don't care the party. We need more people being willing to take on that corruption. So I come back also. Well, thank you. Let's clap. Elon Musk has a lot of a role in the Trump administration right now, through Doge and otherwise. My objection is not that the man is rich. I don't care. My objection is that the guy has massive conflicts of interest that I think are corrupt, getting contracts from the government. Don't get me wrong, I'm all about making our government more efficient to protect all the money that we put into our government. I serve on the Armed Services Committee. The place you start if you're worried about fraud and waste is the Pentagon. We see price gouging happening across weapons systems, you name it. There's a lot of waste there, and I say that as a guy who wore the uniform. We know we could do much better at the Department of Defense. Yeah, I don't hear much out of Doge targeting big spending in the Pentagon. Makes you wonder. What we should not be doing, what we should not be targeting, are public safety professionals. There are people in Allegheny County who work at a NIOSH facility, that's the abbreviation, who work on things like respirators, certifying those things, right? That people in the building trades rely on, firefighters. They were terminated. We pushed back, some of them are getting their jobs back, but not all of them. There are folks who work on mine research who are still in the chopping block. I don't think it makes sense to have these folks fired when their work is important. We know their work is important. We've been pushing back and having some success. Some of those guys are coming back to work. We had grant funding that was paused for the Max Ovanka murals at St. Nicholas Church in Millvale. Got that money restored to those guys. Ross and Westview EMS, that grant funding is coming back. I don't want to paint a rosy picture, but I think the pressure from folks, I don't mean just me, can have a real impact. So me as your representative, or senators, anybody else, we're all in this thing together, and I think representatives hearing from the people they serve is how we get some change done in Washington. So I hope you guys are committed to that. It is an important thing. I will stop talking. I want to hear from you guys. I think this is the job, right? I hold town halls. I come take questions at Chamber of Commerce, breakfasts, at senior centers, at places of worship, you name it. I see politicians. If you're afraid to do that, this is probably not the job for you. And I think that's a pretty strong I see the state politicians, Joe McAndrew, who I know takes those questions. Joe, good to see you. All right, with that, I think I'll turn it back to Caroline, and we will take some questions. Caroline, where'd you go? Oh, she's right here. All right, guys, let's get into it.
Thank you, Congressman. All right, so before we get started on our Q&A portion, I just want to go over a couple of ground rules. Just to make sure as many of you as possible get to ask a question. So we will be randomly drawing raffle tickets. I have them right here. So we're not screening questions or anything. It's just whoever comes out of this box. I'm going to draw tickets 2 at a time just to move through things a little bit faster. So if you hear your number called, please stand up and come to the end of your row. My colleagues Inej and Kira, if you guys can raise your hands, have microphones and they will come and find you. So the first number I called will ask their question first, and then after that question is answered, we'll move on to the other number. And go ahead and take a seat after you ask for a question. If your number does get called, we ask that you stick to our rules as well. So please limit your questions to 30 seconds or less. We do have stopwatches in real time. And then tell us your name and what township or borough you live in before you ask, just so we know who everyone is. And finally, everyone please be respectful. We have kids here. Don't be a jack off. And respectful. Thank you, everybody. All right, with that, I will go ahead and ask our first question. All right, our first number is 667185. And then our second number will be 667193.
Hi, my name is Darcy's daughter, and I'm from Edgewood. Some of you know me and know I'm a retired Foreign Service officer who proudly served in Afghanistan. When I was in Afghanistan, the consulate that I worked at was attacked. 7 Afghans lost their lives just protecting us, U.S. diplomats. At that time, we had a program where we gave out visas to these people who worked for us every day and put their life literally on line. And not that I want to take away from other people who've come here on these special programs, but I am just crazed that we are now lifting these protections for the Afghans that are in the United States. So I turn to you, Congressman, and say, what are you doing? What can we do? I am so upset. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to say something too about your service. Thank you. Right? People think and often will thank veterans. And it's diplomatic for when so many people are in public service in real ways, in harm's way, as you were. And so thank you. And you went to the heart of it, right? So many of these are people who were on the front lines with Americans, very much in danger, put their families in danger. I didn't serve in Afghanistan, I served in Iraq, plenty of my colleagues who served in Afghanistan in the House, in both parties, have been pushing hard to get those folks and their visas processed, to get them here, and to push back against exactly what you described. I think it's a betrayal of the bond and the promise we make to someone that if you're gonna risk your life with Americans in war, for crying out loud, that we're gonna help you when you're in danger, when you fear for your life from the Taliban. And as you know, we have Afghan refugees in this region, as we do from Ukraine and other places. These are people fleeing violence and war they didn't ask for. And I've been pushing before the Trump administration to try to get that program formalized under law, to get those folks expedited and vetted to come to this country with their families. I think it's a stain, a real one, on our country's bond. Not just that didn't happen then, but now you're seeing the efforts of the Trump administration to eliminate the program and eliminate those protections for people. And so I will continue to push that that doesn't happen. And again, many may not know this. We have people from those programs, from places like Afghanistan and Ukraine, in this district, in this region, living here, trying to contribute to American society. So this is not some far-flung thing. These are people in this region. Thank you.
Hello, Ben Taggart. I live here in Oakmont. When we have a president who doesn't seem to be respecting the Constitution, following court orders, trying to usurp the legislature's ability to raise taxes and to spend money, and taking those abilities for himself, what do you recommend to us as citizens is the best way that we can push back on that and ensure that the Constitution is respected? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I shouldn't gloss over the first part of your question, which is to highlight that there are real stresses. If anyone came to my first town hall, that's where I started, my first town hall this year, that's where I started my remarks, of there are real attempts to test the limits of our Constitution, to force the courts to step in and say, no, we still have due process rights in this country. That's happening. It may be something as small, you may have heard a fight about the Library of Congress. Okay, that doesn't seem like that high stakes, but actually it's about whether the executive or the Congress controls different parts of our government, and what proper role the courts have, what proper role the Congress has, and what proper role the president has. Those aren't small fights, and I say this as a guy who even in the last Congress with a Democratic president voted against my party and the president because I thought on war powers, Congress had given up too much power to the president, whatever the party. I think that's something that we should be concerned about. You guys hear that? Yeah. Okay, is that better? Okay, sorry. And the other part of your question is, well, what can you do? Participating in your democracy and talking to guys like me is part of it. I think and I hope you understand that I share your concerns. Somebody's messing with us. Okay. I share your concerns. I'm going to do everything I can to uphold my oath. Right? I take an oath to the Constitution, as does every other member of Congress, as does the president. Essentially the same one I took as a midshipman at the Naval Academy. That is a really important, serious thing that I value and do not take lightly. I would urge all of you to find any way that you can participate. And that is, there could be the whole litany of finding candidates, and I'm not up here as a candidate, I'm here in my government job, I'm not going to talk about campaigning, I can't. Making your voice heard. Making sure other representatives hear from you is part of this. I care, and my team knows that we want to hear from my constituents. We have too many calls coming in, we're going to call you back. I get a report of the calls, the emails, the website submissions. It matters to me what my constituents are saying. I don't speak for any other politician, but it should matter for them too. And if the president wants to behave like he doesn't care what you think, well, we have elections next year. We have elections 2 years after that. And I think make your voice heard in all the ways you know. Now, if we were in a different kind of setting, I could give you some more partisan political advice, but I think you get the point.
All right, next two questions. First, we have 667199. Got it? Okay. And then our next one will be 667202. 7202.
Thank you, Representative Deluzio, for doing this. My question is, I'm sure myself and a lot of other people in this room have been at demonstrations here in Pittsburgh and other places in an effort to address some of the things that the president is doing that we have a lot of concern about. As an elected representative, how do you feel when you see these people doing it, and do you think it has an effect? Thank you.
I'll start with the second part of your question. Absolutely, I think it has an effect. And as you may know, I've been out there, from Beaver County Courthouse to rallying other part of the state, where I think there are Republican colleagues of mine who should be listening more to their constituents. I think it matters. If you're a politician or elected official who doesn't think hearing from your constituents matters, you're not doing the job right. So I think when I talk about our Constitution, that also includes the First Amendment, and the right to peaceably assemble, to make your voice heard, and to speak up. So I do think these demonstrations and participating in our democracy, which is what that is, matters. I didn't think that announcing that we should have hands off on Medicaid would change people's minds, I wouldn't participate, but I do. I think us saying there are no kings in America matters. My concerns about there being oligarchy or government by big, powerful interests is real. And I think a lot of people share that across the parties. You understand that when I talk about corruption, I'm also talking about how much money distorts our elections. You think about the ads you see when anyone in Pennsylvania is running, we're used to them. We get all the TV spending here. The lion's share of that is unlimited, often undisclosed super PAC spending. And that's typically big corporations. Not all, not exclusively, but that's a lot of what that is. I think that's a problem for our democracy. And I think a lot of people, Democrats and Republicans and everyone in between, share that concern. And so I connect the dots because if you can drown out the voice of the people, the collective power of the people with money and ads and all the rest of it, it distorts our democracy. And so I always connect it back to the way the machinery of our democracy runs and the corrupting influence of money in our elections. I think they are linked. We've got to break the stranglehold of money in politics.
Hi, Chris. My name is Jim Mitnick. I'm from Indiana Township, and we've met many times. I have spent and written dozens of letters to Republicans trying to get their attention to issues that are important to us in Western PA and across the country. Are there any Republicans that we can get a hold of? Well, first of all, when they respond to me, their comment is typically, we really don't listen to people outside of our district. Right, which is really sad because I thought they were representing all of us. Are there Republicans that you know that we can work with to see if we get them across to our way of thinking so we can, deal with these issues with our current administration?
Jim, thank you. And look, we also have two senators, one's a Democrat, one's a Republican. They represent everybody in Pennsylvania. So even if you're not talking about just members of Congress, we have senators who represent all of us who should hear from us too. And I will say, look, I'm not someone who doesn't believe that bipartisanship can work. I think it has its role and its place, and I try where I can to work with my Republican counterparts. I introduced a bill this week about putting more competition into the Defense Department, back to that spending and waste and fraud, where we have Senate and House Democrats, Republicans on this bill. Everyone from Elizabeth Warren to some conservative Republicans. We should be able to find places to do that. I have some minor optimism that some of my Republican counterparts are being a little nervous now because they've heard from folks about cutting Medicaid and taking health care away from people. Right? I want them to change their mind. I'm not looking to have a fight just to have a fight. I want to protect health care for people. And I hope that they will see that this is bad policy and that taking away health care from people to pay for tax giveaways for corporations and rich people is bad policy and bad politics. They're going to saddle all of us with something like $3 or $4 trillion of debt over the next 10 years if this bill passes. And so they should change their mind. Now, if we don't have discourse, if we're not talking about it, if you send me down there and you don't expect I'm going to go try to change their mind, I don't think we're doing the job right. And so you should expect that I'm trying to change their mind, that I have those relationships. I serve in this one of the caucuses I'm in. It's called the 4 Country Caucus. It's veterans of both parties. We don't agree on everything, believe me. But we can find some common ground now and again. My rail safety fight has been a bill that I've always kept bipartisan. I think it was the only bill that Joe Biden and Donald Trump agreed about, which is crazy to think about, but they did. Right? So you gotta find some places where you can cut through it. The other reality of this is, most things that go through the Senate have to get through a filibuster, which means 60 votes. So unless you got a massive majority, you gotta get both parties, or at least some number of votes from both parties to pass something. So I'm not all doom and gloom, but at the moment, they have been proceeding down this path on this healthcare tax bill that I think is foolish, that I hope they're hearing from folks, I hope they change their mind.
All right, next up, number 667204. Right. And then after that, 667190. 7190. Go ahead.
My name's June Esser, I'm from Fraser Township. My question is about impeachment. So it's an old topic and we're all really exhausted. You know, you say the word impeachment, people immediately get tired, including myself. But my question is what's going on right now? I understand last week there was some articles filed by a gentleman, I believe in Illinois, somewhere, and then a number of the party leaders, AOC, I believe, I don't know who else, went to him and encouraged him to back down. Hard to get details on why that was, because he had 7 clear charges of impeachment that would have been invalid. My understanding is this upcoming week, Representative Green will introduce more articles. As a lifelong yellow dog Democrat who's quite active, it's confusing, even though I try to go to multiple sources to find out what exactly is the posture of the Democratic Party and what can we do as constituents. So any enlightenment you can offer. Thank you.
Sure. June, I think is here. Some background I'll try to fill in if folks didn't know as much about what June was asking. A colleague of mine from Michigan was going to introduce some impeachment articles, decided not to. I hadn't heard about Mr. Green, but essentially there hasn't been any kind of vote on impeaching. These are about impeaching the president. There hasn't been a vote on the floor. As you folks may know, the majority in the House controls the committees and thus gets to decide whether they're investigating hearings. Democrats elect our own leadership in the committees, and my judiciary chair ranking member is a guy who I think knows what the heck he's doing, a constitutional scholar, Jamie Raskin from Maryland. And so your question gets to, well, what are Democrats doing? And let me start with, right, the power to impeach a federal official and remove them from office is a serious one. It's not one I take lightly. Certainly when you're talking about the President of the United States, it doesn't get much more serious than that in my book. Jamie Raskin, who's a guy, again, who knows the Constitution, who prosecuted the case in the first Trump administration around impeachment, I think is a important voice leading in my Democratic caucus. And I think what I would say is he is doing a good job of leading us, and if there is a case to be made, I think he will make it. I think part of this is having the power of subpoena investigation hearings that until there is a Democratic majority, the Republicans aren't playing along with. And so, if he is the chairman, if Democrats control the House, Jamie Raskin will be the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. And I would have great confidence in his investigative work, his ability to put together a case, make sure the American people understand that case and take the facts where they are. That hasn't happened yet. I don't want to prejudge where any of this lands. But I think for anyone who's followed Mr. Raskin understands he's the guy who knows how to put together a case and is a straight shooter on where the Constitution is.
Hello, Congressman. My name's Torsten Ove. I'm a former reporter for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I covered federal court for 25 years. Not doing that anymore, but my big concern, among many, is the weaponization of the FBI and the DOJ under this administration. So I was in court, in U.S. District Court in Pittsburgh for many years. I had my own office there. I saw DOJ in action every day. I knew FBI agents, DEA, all the other agencies. I didn't see corruption of any kind in all those years. But now I see a judge in Wisconsin being arrested. I see this administration pushing the boundaries. I see people like Pam Bondi, who has no business being in that position, running DOJ. I'm really worried about where this is going to end up, and I'd like to know what you can do about that as a congressman. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me start with some of the concerns that I also share. You mentioned the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. Folks may have seen just this week that there's reports that she was selling or trading some Trump stock that she probably had some inside information around, I think in the last week. And again, that corruption is real. It erodes trust. It's something we have to take head on. And the rule of law and the norms that I think are being stressed, maybe no place with higher stakes than when you talk about law enforcement and the power of the federal government to take away your liberty. Right? That's when you're talking about being in the courts and doing reporting. The FBI knocking your door is likely leading to an arrest and you're getting charged with federal crimes. That's serious stuff. The Bill of Rights is all about constraining the power of the city, right? To put some guardrails to make sure they make their case in full view of the public in front of a jury. Those are bedrock principles. And I know I'm saying things that we all know, but we should say those things, right? We had a Supreme Court decision in the last day or two reaffirming that you have to follow the law and you have to even give people you're trying to deport under an expedited basis some due process. Those are bedrock principles in America. And I don't think anyone, maybe I'm wrong, I don't think anyone would want their political opponents to be able to take people and throw them in jail, kick them out of this country without someone checking that they were right. That's due process. That's what it is. What can I or anyone else do? Part of it is when we find out about things, making sure the public knows about it, demanding answers from the administration, any administration, holding them to task, and if they're violating the law, proceeding down the path of working with the Judiciary Chairman to remove them from office. If people violate their oaths, they don't say their oaths in my law. I don't care their party. Again, I don't prejudge any facts, but those are the tools that Congress has at our disposal. And I think you should see and expect some courage from people who have a job like mine to stand up for the Constitution. And I don't just mean people in my political party. Right? I come back to that caucus argument of Democrats, Republicans. Those are all people who raise their right hand to take an oath, and many of them risk their life for this country. I would expect they would uphold their oaths too, and be clear about any stress to our Constitution. So we need some courage across the parties in this.
All right, next question will be 667189. And then after that, 667195.
Hi, Congressman. My name is Sandy Fox. I'm from Churchill. I'm a psychiatric social worker. And for 20 years, I've been an advocate for national improved Medicare for all. I appreciate that you co-sponsored the bill that was recently reintroduced. And I'd like to ask you to speak to why you support this bill.
I'll start with a basic idea that in the richest country in the history of planet Earth, people should be able to go to the doctor when they're sick. I don't think people should have to face financial ruin to get medicine or go to the doctor. And I think, raise your hand if you've ever been on the phone fighting a claim in your healthcare system. How's that experience been? Okay? Our system has its many, many flaws. And we know that we can make Medicare better. Certainly there are problems that we've now seen some charges against United Healthcare, even on the Medicare Advantage side of things in the last week or so, where they're overbilling or denying claims. But I think that people should really get healthcare. I think we can bring down costs. I think that all the way up to having something like a single payer system, you can raise the eligibility age for Medicare. You can add things like hearing, vision, and dental, right? You can have public option. All of these are ways to get us to that bill that you're talking about, that I think it makes sense. Or if folks could still have the freedom to add supplemental private insurance, whether through work or otherwise. But again, I come back to, you asked why, a basic idea. Our system that we have is too expensive. It hasn't worked well enough. We know that drug prices in particular are growing much faster than normal cost of inflation. The same for healthcare in general. And the experience dealing with these private insurance companies that have profit motive has led to worse care for people. I get my healthcare in the VA. I'm very proud of the fact that I get my healthcare in the VA. I push the VA to do better all the time. But I see the same studies. The VA does as well or better than most of the out-of-town for-profit providers. We have different models in this country we can look to. And so again, I come back to the basic value of people should be able to get healthcare. Our government already is deeply involved in healthcare through Medicare and otherwise. We can make this better for people. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Lynch. I work with an organization called Moms Clean Air Force, and I live in Indiana Township. 2 weeks ago, severe storms hit our area, damaging homes, knocking over trees, and ripping down power lines, leading to some families being without power for over a week. We know extreme storms are becoming more severe and frequent. I'm wondering what you're doing to help us increase resilience and address climate change.
Thank you, Vanessa. Raise your hand if you lost power in the storms. Right, raise my hand too. Listen, on the one hand, storms happen, and as I said in the introduction of this seems to be more frequent, right? I don't need to speculate about how often it's happening. I think we just kind of know this is something we're seeing and dealing with more. And part of why I sent this survey out and why I want to hear from folks, I think that we got to push the utilities and our local governments to do better. I don't think people want to accept that in 2025 in this country, that a storm like that happens, we're going to expect to be out without power for a week, and that you're not going to get an accurate even estimate of when you get power back. And again, I say, if you're in the dead of summer, the heat, my goodness, we could have had a lot of death and suffering. And I know people lost medicine and food and a heck of a lot else in all of this. And so what am I going to do? I'm trying to push, number one, I want answers from people. Tell me what happened, or ideas from people, excuse me. Tell me what happened. That arms me up to go and try and corral our regional leadership, from my colleague Joe McAndrew and others who serve in Harrisburg, to the utilities and our local governments. What can we do differently? And again, I've already seen ideas about burying the power lines, more aggressive tree pruning and tree maintenance. I heard reports of even some police departments on having backup generators. If we're going to have storms that happen like this, and it's a longer-term solution to shore up our infrastructure, in the meantime, we got to make sure that we have core public services up and running. The VA, that's my understanding, was also running on a generator with reduced power for this. There were power challenges at healthcare providers. I don't think most of us want to accept that. Maybe I'm wrong. Do we want to accept that? No. I don't think so. And again, this is not, the Congress is not going to fix all of this, but you know what? Part of my job is trying to lead regionally and push us to solutions, to push companies like Duquesne Lake to do better, to work with my colleagues who serve in Harrisburg and our local government to find answers for our region. So I take this very seriously. I think we have to do better as a region. And again, we all lived through this. It was pretty miserable. It could have been much worse. And that should be a wake-up call for all of us.
Next up, we'll have 667150. And then after that, 667134.
Hi Chris, my name's Bob Heister, Fox Chapel. I'm distressed at the involvement of private equity, buying up the power companies, buying up anything that could possibly generate generate more wealth for their funders. Duquesne Light didn't have to be that way. Once upon a time, it was a shareholder-controlled public utility. It's been bought and sold several times. Not long ago to an out-of-country entity called Macquarie, and now I don't know who owns it, but some other private equity outfit. What can be done to control what private equity is doing to power companies, to medical, the pharmacy benefit providers? It's a cancer that is not being regulated in any way, shape, or form, and it's just eating away to our society.
Folks may have seen the news in the last week. Governor Shapiro is targeting exactly this problem on the healthcare side with private equity ownership. And you might be thinking, well, so what? Well, the outcomes for patients are considerably worse, whether we're talking hospitals or nursing homes when they're owned and controlled by private equity. And there are a lot of predatory practices we see, business practices that are designed to lease back property at exorbitant rates. They cut the patient staffing ratios, which leads to worse healthcare. The evidence is really clear that it is a dangerous thing to have private equity, for-profit ownership in the healthcare space in particular. They've also buying up vegetables, all kinds of businesses. So I'm very concerned about this. I support what the governor's trying to do here in Pennsylvania, and will be with him if he needs support down in Washington. And you also mentioned pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs. Who knows what those are? Yeah, these are essentially the corporate middlemen that are between you, your medicine, and your pharmacy. And sometimes they are all part of the same corporation or a family of corporations that has healthcare providers, pharmacies, maybe brick and mortar and mail order, insurers, and then the middleman PBM business. And they are responsible for driving pharmacies out of business, for jacking up the cost of prescription drugs. I had a group of colleagues and I launched an anti-monopoly caucus in the last month or so, and kind of across the ideological spectrum. But we all brought some folks from home to share a story about how monopoly power is hurting American capitalism, is hurting American workers, is hurting consumers, small business. I had a father-son duo who run a pharmacy in Aspinwall. Come with me. Town drugs. There's some Aspinwall folks. There you go. You know what they talked about? These are independent small business owners. They talked about how PBMs are making it so much harder for them to stay in business, how many pharmacies are closing across Pennsylvania. It's a lot. How that means worse service for their patients, and the terms that are dictated to them from these PBMs, which essentially say if you don't accept these predatory terms, you're out of business, all while they're steering prescriptions to their mail order pharmacy where, of course, you can't get help if you have something specialty. If you need the service of the counter, if you need delivery in your neighborhood. That's bad for small business, that's bad for competition, it's bad for patients. And it's playing out in the same kind of ways that private equity is playing out across our economy. And by the way, sorry, now I'm going on PBMs. There was almost going to be PBM reform at the very end of last year, at the end of the last Congress. And it was going to be bipartisan, it was in the spending bill that was likely going to pass. Elon Musk popped up and voiced his strong objection. Wouldn't you know it, my counterparts in the Republican Party folded, and that didn't happen. This is hurting business, it's hurting patients, it's hurting all of us. So we've got to be clear about it. I hope this anti-monopoly effort that I'm a part of can be part of us fighting back. Because again, I think fighting against monopoly power is fundamentally American. We believe in competition in this country of ours. Thank you.
My name is Bermuda Clover. I live in Ross Township. First of all, I want to thank you, Congressman, because I have contacted your office a few times on different issues, and I've always gotten a response, and I appreciate it. I guess my concern is the blatant corruption in this administration that they don't even try to hide anymore. And I wonder what the Congress can do with that, or if they'll do anything about that since it's Republican-led.
Thank you for the question. As you probably could tell, I get fired up about corruption. I've talked about it a lot tonight. It's a real problem. And look, I think our system is based on this idea that we can govern ourselves. That's fundamentally what American democracy is. And the corruption, whether it's members of Congress, trade stock, or what you're talking about, the administration, all erodes our trust in our system. And when you don't trust our democracy, I think it sets the stage for people to try to test it, try to seize more power, move toward authoritarianism. And so fighting corruption is not just some hypothetical fight in the abstract. It's one that we have to win. And I'm not to answer the question what my Republican counterparts will do with this administration. I would think that they would have enough respect for our rule of law to call out corruption no matter who's doing it. I'm going to keep encouraging them to do that with me. The congressional stock trading ban is a good example where there's finally a little more momentum. Maybe we will pass it. Even Donald Trump has said he'll sign it if we pass it. We'll see. I'll believe it when I see it, but I hope he does. But look, I wish that this weren't so partisan. I would think that most members of Congress, if they saw someone enriching themselves because they knew a tariff pause was coming and they got rich on it, would be ready to call for their firing, would be ready to call for investigations as I have. I need a couple Republicans to join us with that, or for there to be a different majority in the House and we can do some real investigations.
Yeah.
But until then, I hope they can come around with us. Before I keep going back, I gotta drink water or I'll lose my voice.
All right, I think we have time for one more question.
Are they gonna kick us out of here?
Yeah, maybe.
We'll do a couple more, or do okay, do a couple more.
All right, we'll do a couple more. Next question after will be 667181. Anybody? Good. And after that will be 667136. Oh, we didn't have one for 7181.
Yeah, right there.
Okay.
Well, thank you for coming here. My name's Linda Rankin, and I'm from Penhills. I have to say, I congratulate my neighborhood, my Penhills municipality. We have a neighborhood playground that was covered with trees. We could not get around our neighborhood easily. Trees were down everywhere. In one day, all of it was cleaned up. Now, we still didn't have power for 2.5 days, but I'm just talking about the cleanup and the crews got our neighborhood working again. My other question, what in the world, they're trying to destroy the Department of Education and ban books and go against our university and silence our right for free speech. This is the start of like Nazism. Sorry, I had to say that. And it's getting worse. So Congressman, I don't know who do we contact, and it's really bad.
Well, number one, I'm glad to hear the park was cleaned up quickly. That's a good story amidst what was otherwise a brutal couple of weeks for folks. Let's start with some of what you talked about. Department of Education, right? Anyone who's an educator or a parent, a public school parent, we know how much federal money comes into our districts. How important that is for kids with disabilities. For some of the worst funded schools in our region, what would it mean to see that federal money go away? It'd be disastrous. Disastrous. I could say that and I get it, but the numbers are real. Federal money, especially for kids with disabilities, and that's not funded enough. Right? The thing that we should be doing is fully funding the federal government share to support kids with disabilities. That doesn't even happen. And you mentioned book bans. I got to tell you, so one of the things that I get to do, which I think is a great honor because of my service in the House, I was appointed to serve on the board of the Naval Academy where I graduated. I'm very proud of that. Do you know what they're doing at the Naval Academy with this administration? They have directed the removal of books from the library. And let me be clear to folks who may not know much about the Naval Academy. It is where midshipmen, so they are our future Navy Marine Corps officers. It is tough. They're training to lead Marines and sailors in harm's way. Believe me, it's tough. They're also being educated, right? They graduate with a bachelor's degree. It's an academic institution. And if you're going to trust a 21 and 22-year-old second lieutenant or ensign to, God forbid, go lead Marines and sailors in combat, you can trust them to read a book. I don't think it's a crazy idea. And so, you ask, what can we do? What are we doing? Well, I'm on that board. I'm fighting Senator Chris Van Hollen and I, and Congresswoman Elfreth and I are on the board trying to take that fight to make them reverse this decision. But it's coming from the Pentagon. It's coming from Pete Hegseth, who, by the way, should be removed from office. I didn't even that. Folks know about the Signal Gate scandal. Anyone who's ever been involved, whether you wore the uniform or you're involved in national security jobs, you would never communicate the kind of information about an active operation on anything but a classified channel. And he was doing it on an unclassified personal device that I'm sure was compromised. It is reckless. I said at the time that the head should rule, I said we should investigate. If they don't fire these folks, we should proceed down the path of removing them from office, because it's that reckless and dangerous. That's what I think we should do.
Okay. I know you can come down.
I'm known for long speeches. Okay. My wife every morning tells me, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. But I have something to say today. First of all, thanks for coming, Chris. And over and above all, this gives me hope. Thank you all for coming today. Here's my point. I taught American history for 35 years to high school people, okay? And then I ran upon a great philosopher, Santana. He said, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it, okay? I see a major problem. I'm going to get to a question. But it takes a while. Sorry. I have a soldiers and sailors hat on. Okay? I worked there for 24 years. I'm on RCAC, Senior Citizen Center. I'm the vice chair of the Democratic Party of Oakmont, and I'm a very proud person. We've done a lot. Thanks, girls. Mainly women who've been forgotten. Here's the point. When I taught American history, particularly the Second World War, okay, I saw the rise and fall of the Third Reich. And you knew who led the Third Reich. And you also know, if you don't know, what his vice president called him. I won't repeat that right now, but you figured it out, I'm sure. And then the word I haven't heard from the media, which really disturbs me, is the word totalitarian, which is, by the way, total government. And there are 10 points. Once you reach that, you have the model, which was the Third Reich. And you know what? He's after public television, NPR. He's going to sue CBS because somebody said they didn't like him. That's one. You know what station we'll have in the end? You all know. Right. Okay? He said he's not going to end. He wants to have the third term. I don't have to keep going, but I know all 10 points, and I'm worried. Okay? But because I watch Rachel Maddow, and I would love to I'd say you better have a plane ready to go at any moment. Because she took his cabinet apart one by one. Here's my question. You all want me to get to that? Here's the question. I cried when Hillary didn't get it. Because women, that's the final glass ceiling. And then I cried when she didn't get it. We have 2 million people out there. She got 77 million. He got 79. Okay? We need, question, to take a look at why we lost 2.1 million. Okay? I'm a Democrat. I believe that my hope can only be from the local up. But we need to take a look at our party. And I imagine most of you are Democrats. And we always say we're from a big tent. I'm finishing up. And a big tent is the strength, and it is also sometimes the controversy. How do we get those 2 million people back? Thank you.
Well, let me start with, I have optimism about this country, I have optimism about where the American people are. Right? If I didn't fundamentally believe that we could govern ourselves, that we're good and decent people, I wouldn't be doing this job, right? And you said you thought maybe everyone here, most people, my district is about 50-50 Democrats, Republicans, and independents. This is a competitive district. That's rare in our system. And I think the fact that it's rare is part of the problem, right? Most districts in America, because of gerrymandering, because of the way they draw, people don't have to go out and compete for votes. They don't have to meet people where they are. They don't have to take the lumps of somebody disagreeing with you. I think that's a problem, right? And I think that's how you kind of get such extremism that we see in a lot of our politics, where you have such tribal loyalty to your partisan allies and nothing else. And so maybe I'm closing on a little bit of like a grand idea, a grand gesture, but you know what? We need some of that. It does. I understand the mistakes. I understand the risks of what's going on in our system. Believe me, I do. I take my oath very seriously. But I come back to, I have great faith in all of us. I have great faith in the people who I get to serve, the people who elect people like me all over the country. I trust our judgment. That means sometimes your party's going to win, sometimes your party's going to lose. And we'll save the discussion for what Democrats can do differently for a campaign event, and I'm sure my Republican counterparts will do the same. Because no election is static. Majorities change, midterms and presidential majorities, elections, they come and go. But I think on the fundamental question of will our system of government hold, is it strong? It's under stress. I think it will hold. If the American people understand and have faith and want us to govern responsibly, they don't want to see the erosion of the rule of law. They don't want to see the Constitution ignored. They don't want to see anything resembling a king in America. I certainly don't. I don't think any of you do either. So my promise is the same one I've always given, that I will uphold my oath and do everything I can for the people who elected me, no matter their party, and for this country that I have loved for a long time, that I swore an oath to defend this country back when I was 17, and I still believe as deeply as I did that. Thank you.
All right, we've got time for one last question. That was pretty good. All right, last one will be 667169.
Hi, I'm Julie Kinsack. I'm from Carnegie, and I actually work in a child care center in Vernon, so neighborhoods that I love. My question is, do you or the party, and maybe this is a political question you can't answer, but do you see someone down the pipe that would be a truly viable presidential candidate for 2028? Are people kind of being led or groomed, or, I don't hate that word, but led or encouraged, or, because I think, I'm not real sure that's been the case.
It's a great question. Now, I would love to answer your question, but here's the thing. I'm here at my government town hall, and I would get in trouble if I got into like who my party's nominee or who the Republicans would nominate, so we'll save that for a different day. I'm sorry that I don't want to get into it in a way that I shouldn't. But I will just say this. We will have elections in 2026 and 2028. And as I say, our majorities change a lot. I've served, this is my second term. My first term, I was in the minority. Republicans controlled the House. Democrats were the majority of the Senate. Joe Biden, as Democrat, was president. I'm now serving where Republicans are in control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. I have no idea what the future holds, but I come back to my having faith and optimism about where we go. We can talk on the other side of things, okay?
Guys, thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here. Before I hand it back over to the Congressman for some closing remarks, just a couple of announcements. If you wanted to ask a question tonight but weren't able to, we will be having our next teletown hall. That'll take place over the phone. That'll be on Wednesday, June 25th from 6 to 7 p.m. and that'll be while the Congressman is down in DC for votes. So you can scan this QR code behind me if you'd like to sign up for that. It's on our website, deluzio.house.gov/live. And then, as always, our team is here to help with any federal agency. If you're coming down to DC and you'd like a tour of the Capitol or the White House or anything else, give us a call. We're happy to set something up. Or if you want to request a flag from the Capitol in honor of a loved one, just give our office a call. Our team is kind of all around the edge here, so happy to take any questions afterward if you'd like that as well. Or if you just want to call our office and share your thoughts, like the Congressman said, we can track all of that and we like hearing from you guys, so don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you guys very much, and I'll hand it over to the Congressman.
Well, Caroline, thank you. And yeah, my team is around. They all have name tags on, I think, except for Caroline, who you just heard from a lot. They are here to help with any federal agency issues you have. Do not be shy about that. That is a core part of the job. I'm very proud of the work they do to return federal money back to folks through things like IRS, VA, Medicare, you name it, the federal agency issue, we can hopefully help with the passports. I go on and on. So don't be shy about asking us for help. If you got a question, they're all circulating. Please go ask them. I'll just close again with a thank you. It's a great honor to get to do this job. I hope others who are in positions like me feel the same way about this job. And I said a version of this throughout. I believed when I was in the Navy, when I was serving at sea in Iraq, I believed that America was worth our efforts, that it was worth fighting for. I still believe that just as deeply as I did then, and I suspect I'm not alone in that. So thank you guys.